Hello and welcome back to Reality Remake. Today we're sharing with you 5 helpful tips and tricks for The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2, Retribution. God, that name is a mouthful. This game is a fantastic follow-up to one of the greatest virtual reality games out there, but if you're having a tough time, maybe you're not enjoying it as much as you could. Well, if you're struggling or just want to dominate the flooded streets of The Walking Dead's New Orleans even harder, here are some premium tips and tricks for The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2, Retribution. Check out our previous video on Chapter 1 for even more tips that are still applicable here. Link in the description. Let's get it started with tip number 1. Some materials are easier to find at night. With this new chapter of The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners comes new crafting materials like casings and biomass, along with new crafting tables to use them on, and the ability to explore New Orleans at night. To explore at night, you can either sleep through the day by using the flask in the resting place, or travel somewhere like you usually would, but go to another location instead of heading back to the resting place. That means you can go to 2 places in one day. The tactical flashlight you got in the Aftershocks DLC for the first game is very useful at night. Switching it to UV not only reveals useful graffiti on the walls that would lead you towards the local Exile trader, but it will also illuminate items to loot that you can only find at night. Items like bird skulls, oyster mushrooms, and moss. While you can still find these new materials in other places, to get them in really big quantities, you'll want to go out at night and pick up these glowing items. You definitely won't regret it. The new crafting tables make some great stuff. Oh, and you'll also find a lot of dead exiles at night with their discarded backpacks right beside them. You can find a lot of great things in these backpacks, like boxes of materials, the best healing item in the game, other useful loot, and guns. Going out at night is very profitable. Now for tip number 2. Stealth is more useful at night, but it's not required. The downside of scavenging at night is that it's dark and hard to see. Oh, and there's a lot more walkers than there usually are. Not only will you run across them more frequently, but they come in larger groups than during the day. This makes traveling at night significantly more dangerous than during the day, but the upside is that all that darkness also makes it harder for the walkers to see you. The streets and open areas are lined with trash can fires, though who keeps those lit is anybody's guess. Walking or crouch walking and avoiding the light of these fires means that walkers will not notice you and try to eat you unless you get very close. This also naturally means that you should keep your flashlight off if you don't want to be seen, though you'll still be able to see things that are right in front of you. So you won't be completely blind, just mostly. Listening to the soft moaning of nearby walkers helps to avoid stumbling into them in the darkness. Attracting even a single walker can easily generate enough noise from their hungry screeching for a large group to take notice and start chasing after you as well. Though if you find an area that is chock full of walkers, you can always use useful items like the Frankenflare or Noisemaker arrows to draw them away so that you can pass through. Of course, you can always just fight all of the walkers instead. If you're good at combat in The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2 Retribution, and you play it a little smart, you can chop or shoot your way through, though you'll definitely expend more resources in the process, so bring lots of melee weapons and bullets if you plan to approach night violently. Tip number 3. Always wear bolted up gloves. Speaking of melee weapons and violence, some of the new weapons added in Chapter 2 of The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners are especially useful. These would be the sap gloves and bolted up gloves. These weapons won't take up a slot on your body or your backpack because you wear them on your hands, and they make punching walkers a viable tactic in combat. With some of these on, you can punch walkers in the head until they keel over, or grab them and drive a fist straight through their skull. These gloves are lifesavers in situations where you panic and drop your weapons, and serve as a reliable backup if you run out of more traditional options. The bolted gloves are a better version of the sap gloves, and you can get them very early on in your first trip to Bourbon Street in the building marked brown on the map. Check out our article on realityremake.com with the locations of the recipes for more specific directions. Link in the description. Now for tip number 4. Pool balls are great loot. Always pick them up. In terms of new lootables, the things you find at night aren't the only great new opportunities to be had. There are a number of new items that you can find lying around. Loot boxes from the first game are still around, but now they come in varying sizes, with mediums and larges containing a lot of great stuff. Though no matter what size you find, they're always worth picking up. An equally good find that you might not suspect is so great and so chocked full of resources are pool balls. Somehow, this tiny and unassuming item has an absolute ton of resources inside of it, making it far better than most junk that you would find, and certainly worth a spot in your backpack. So don't assume pool balls are junk, they're actually great. There are some other good items around too, like guitars and saxophones, that have a lot of materials inside them for a single inventory slot. So if you see something new in Chapter 2, make sure to read the tooltip so you don't leave a lot of great resources behind. Tip number 5, fulfill Exile Trade Network orders. You'll be hearing a lot about the new Exile Trade Network throughout the story missions of The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2, Retribution, and you should take part in it. There is an Exile trader that comes out at night in a specific location on each map. To find where they are, use your UV tactical flashlight to follow the cats painted on the walls. At the end of the trail of cats is a trader who has an order for you to fulfill, usually for items that you would normally scrap or replace with something crafted yourself. You can view the orders in the green tab with the box on it in your journal. If you bring the items requested back to the trader, then you get the reward listed in the order. This also means that you should be careful when scrapping a haul of loot, because you might need some more obscure items later. It can also be tempting to ignore the trades at first, because the rewards aren't very good for the first trade. Each trader gives you 3 different orders, and the first usually gives mediocre rewards at best, but the third trade will usually give you fantastic items, so stick with it and you won't regret it. And now for a bonus tip, recipes from the first game are still there, so if you want to go back and get any of the recipes from the first game, go ahead. Some, like Jambalaya or the Fourth in Pain, come especially recommended to get your hands on again. Note also that some recipes for firearms, explosives, and bullets will sometimes drop off of dead reclaimed and tower soldiers. You might have trouble finding those recipes in Old Town though. Well, that's all the tips we have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Reality Remake. Good luck out there in New Orleans hunting them zombies and whatever else gets in your way.